Sportsman's Radio with your host, motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Be sure to check out Greg at www.gregdwyer.com. That's www.gregdwyer.com. Now on to our show. Take it away, Greg.
We're going to start with a question. Where do you want to be this time next year? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? Where do you want to be 10 years from now? Today we're talking about destiny. So for the last few weeks we've been taking apart these words, diamond and mind. And so today we're at the last letter, which is D, which stands for destiny. So we're at the end. However, next week there's going to be a bonus. So if you look at all of these videos and you count them up, there's like 12 hours of material that you can look over at your leisure. If you want to do it once a week, that's 12 weeks to condition your mind. So today we're going to talk about destiny. Do you have a vision? Do you have a vision of where you want to be? So I'm going to ask you another question real quick. I was at an event the other night. In fact, it was last night. It was an open mic. A friend of mine, Rich, asked me to go last minute, and I decided to work out some material. It was fun. So I want to try it on you right now. So I'd like you to think of a number. Think of a number between 1 and 50. It's an odd number, 2 digits. Both numbers have to be different. Just think whatever comes to mind. So I wonder if you're thinking of a number, right? It's an odd number, 2 digits between 1 and 50. Both digits have to be different. Did you think of 37? Some of you did, some of you didn't. Last night I asked the crowd. I walked out and I said, I know what you're thinking, and we did this. There are people in the audience that thought of the number 37. Did you? Well, if you did, fine. If you didn't, that's okay. The reason I'm mentioning 37 is because today is the 17th of September 2023. That means, listen to this. Listen to this. You ready? 37 weeks have gone by. 37 weeks of this year are over. What did you do with it? Who knows? Well, here's another one. I have some cards here, some playing cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. What does this represent? This represents the rest of this year. So today is Sunday. That means we have 15 weeks. 15 weeks, right? And the year is over. It'll be 2024. Where has the time gone? We're talking about destiny. Do you have a vision? Do you have an idea of where you want to be a year from now, or 5 years from now, or 12 years from now, or 10 years from now? I hope you do. Diamond Mind really has to do with being focused on what's important to you. Now, in the world today, there's just too much information, too many blogs, too many, social media posts. There's just, you could waste your life just being distracted, watching the news, listening to everything, and not being focused. This whole exercise is to get you to think about your life, not my life, but your life, like what's important to you. And of course, to do that, you have to stop, you have to reflect, and you have to examine your life. If you're going to create a new destiny, which I hope that you are, I hope that you can look back a year from now and see how far you've grown, but you have to be focused. Let's face it. Most people, they get focused. Few stay focused. And I've been saying this for about 6 months, but it's true. It's like New Year's Eve resolutions. People say, at the end of the year, beginning of the new year, I'm going to do this, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to make money, I'm going to get out of debt. Very few people stay on that track. Very few people stay focused. I really believe that your destiny has to do with your vision and understanding exactly what's important to you and focusing on it in a daily way so that it gets down into your unconscious mind or your subconscious mind. I really believe that's the key. Now, if you've been to my lecture, and I hope that you have, you know that I talk about two things that come against us. Number one is the conscious mind. The conscious mind is easily distracted. As a magician, I learned this in the 70s. It doesn't take much, especially with clickbait today. You look on the internet and so died, and you're like, I can't believe, and then you click on it, you look at it, you spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you find out none of it's true. Or the news or social media, you can waste, time. We talked about this before. The average person picks up their phone, they tap it, they swipe it, they click it over 2,617 times a day. It's insane. So focusing first on what's important to you, what you value, is the key. In your finances, in your relationships, in your career, whatever it is, there's not a million things. There's probably 5 things in your personal life or 5 things in your business life. It's not a million things. So when you stop and you think about it, you say, well, my health is important, or my finances are important, or my relationships are important, or my career is important. And then you have to have a vision for it. And if you don't have a vision for it, you won't reach your destiny. Because there's just too much out here that will keep you spinning your wheels in distraction. So knowing what's important means that you say no to things that are not important. Because you can't do everything. It's totally impossible to do everything. Focus means you focus on one thing, not 2 things, not 3 things, not 100 things, but one thing. In my lecture, I do a little bit of juggling, and I walk out and I juggle 3 balls because, quite frankly, that's all I can juggle. And I say, juggling 3 balls isn't really multitasking, because when you learn how to juggle balls, you really just focus on one. I have one right here in front of me. You just focus on one, that's it. So if you have 3 of them, you're looking to see where this one ball is going to go, or the other ball that's going to go. You're not looking at, you're not looking at all 3 of them at the same time. You're only looking at one ball. That's it. When it gets to multitasking, if we're here and there, we tend to be nowhere. And we're scattered and we're stressed out. So Diamond Mind is about focusing on what's important and executing it every single week, every single month, every single day, so that you create a better destiny that you envision. So it's a sincere question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Because as I'm looking at the calendar, there's only 15 weeks left. That's it. And we are in the 37th week of this year, September. Today is the 17th, 2023. One of the things that I've come across in my studies on NLP is there's 2 ways of looking at this. The one way is that we are the cause of our life. The other one, we are at the effect of our life. And it's pretty simple. It's not that complicated. One is this idea that we look internally for our destiny, that we envision it and then we make it a reality. So we're thinking to ourselves, tomorrow's Monday, or whenever you're listening to this the next day, and you get in your mind of how you want to live your next day, and you are very clear about it, and maybe you write it down, or you post notes, or you get very clear as far as your outcome of what you want. We've talked about this. And in the process of doing that, you're saying no to every other distraction that comes its way. Now, obviously, if it's an emergency, you're going to take, that route. But when it comes to regular routines and regular life, you're just focused on that one thing. That will compound over time. Over time, that will create for you a new destiny. That's taking 100% responsibility. The other way of looking at it is to be not at the cause of your life, but at the effect of your life. And what I mean by that is you pretty much just drift and you see what happens. You see what opportunities are going to come your way. versus making the opportunities come your way. Cause or effect? So the question I'm asking is, are you at the cause of your life or are you at the effect of your life? Well, we're probably both, right? You know, there's certain things we can control and there's certain things that we can't control, like other people and the weather and the government and all these other things. But to really be clear, I spend most of my time, as much as I can, being the cause of my life, not being at the effect of what's happening around me, as far as, you know, what people say, what people do, or even circumstances. Because let's face it, we can probably throw up our hands and say, well, we don't have that much control, we'll just let things unfold as they will. Well, I think leadership is really about influence. It's about, first of all, influencing ourselves and then influencing other people for what we want to see happen. Now, I'm not saying that everything that we think about or everything that we write down is going to come true, but it's not being a victim of circumstances. I mean, even when things go bad, even when things go wrong, we also have the power to make it mean something, because let's face it, we're bringing that meaning to the table. We could say this is a terrible thing or this is a great thing. You know, we could say, well, what's good about this disaster, or what can I learn from this? So it really comes down to understanding, where do you spend most of your time when it comes to your destiny. Like, for instance, this week. We have this week and next week, and then we're into October. We're in the last quarter of 2023. October, November, December. Let's make this simple. Where do you want to be by December 31st, 2023? Where do you want to be? Where are you sitting? What town are you in? What city are you in? What home are you in? How is your life, you know, in the next 3 months? Let's face it, it's only 90 days. But do you see it better or do you see it worse? Do you see yourself being frustrated on New Year's Eve, or do you see yourself happy on New Year's Eve? Do you see yourself alone, or do you see yourself with friends? How do you see yourself on the last day, right? Which, you know, in, what did I say, 15 weeks? Yeah, 15 weeks. It's going to go by quick. October, November, December, 90 some odd days. It's going to go by really quick. Just like that, we're going to be in 2024. So here's another question. Where do you see yourself January 1st? January 1st, 2023. I would suggest go back and look at these videos. There's over 12 hours of this. We looked at Diamond and we looked at Mine. I truly believe that you can be the cause of your life, that you can get clear, figure out what's important, write it down, and start moving towards it. I have seen it in my own life. The other is to be the effect. That is, you're not clear, you don't know what this year's gonna unfold, you really have no control over any of it, and as far as 2024, you don't have a clue. That's a different way of looking at things. So destiny is really about creating it in your mind and in your imagination first, and then moving towards it. Now, we're going to take a quick commercial, but I have to say this. In June of this year, I booked 22 shows, mind-reading Halloween shows. I've never done this before. I talked about it last week. In my imagination, I just said, let's just do this. And I never ever thought that I was going to create 22 shows. Now I'm thinking about 2024. I'm actually thinking of my destiny in 2024 Halloween. Isn't that crazy? I am thinking past this year into next year, thinking that I'll probably do less shows for more money and I'll be happy doing it. But right now, what I'm happy doing is taking a commercial. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and I think I got my, actually I'm looking at my buttons, it looks like they're all gone. So we're not going to take a commercial break. I apologize for that. But normally what I say is go to www.gregdwyer.ebook.com or just gregdwyer.com, and you can learn about my ebook that I wrote a couple years ago. It talks about how to use the power of your mind. So go to www.gregdwyerebook.com. For some reason, I'm looking at the controls here and they've disappeared, so we're just going to move on. So the next question I have is, how do you create this new destiny? Well, I think it's no different than examining the story of your life and getting really clear about what your life will look like in the future. And one way to do that is to look at your life as a story. You know, think of your life as a story. Just take this on just for a moment. What if your life was a story? Would people want to hear about it? Would people want to read about it? Now, obviously, if you're going to sit down and you're going to write a book or a story about your life or make a movie about your life, you're not going to include everything. That would be impossible. But what you would do is you would create the highlights, or you would focus on the highlights of your life. And obviously, it's going to begin with a problem, and then you're going to overcome the problem, and then you're going to win the day. I mean, if you look at most movies or you read most books that are very positive, it starts off with drama. It starts off with conflict. In my life, it started off really well, and then my mom died when I was 15. Again, a little bit of conflict, in fact, a lot of conflict. And if you look at any story, go to any movie, at the very beginning of the movie, there's going to be chaos and there's going to be conflict or drama. And it's this balance between the two. One of the things I learned from Donald Miller is that if you look at your life as a story, you tend to live within that story. And when you live within that story, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I mean, think about it. If you think to yourself, tomorrow morning I'm going to get up, go to work, I'm going to get in my car, I'm going to drive, and I'm going to look for red cars. Well, most likely you're going to see what you're looking for. So his idea is that in the process of seeing your life through the lens of a story, you're going to move towards that fulfillment of the story. Now, right now I'm in my 60s. So I'm like in the fall of my life. Not really into the winter of my life, but you know, if you think about life, we talked about this before, you got spring, you got summer, you got fall, and you got winter. There's certain things that you do in the winter that you would never do in the spring, certain things you would do in the fall that you would never do in the summer. We all know this. So when you're young and you're kind of foolish like I was, you do some crazy things in your 20s. But then when you grow up to become 30 and 40 and you move on in your life, you get, hopefully, you get a little bit of wisdom and you're not repeating the same patterns over and over again. And then when you get older, like I am, you realize you don't have all the time in the world, right? You only have so much time. And that means you have to say no to certain things so that you can say yes to things that are more important to you. I mean, let's face it, if you watched a movie or you started reading a book and there was a problem, but the hero of the story got distracted and was going in a million directions rather than trying to, stop the bomb or rescue the woman or save the day, you'd say, this is not a really clear story. A clear story's got a beginning, it's got a middle, and it's got an end, right? So here's what I'm saying. I've said all of this to say that. This. Begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. That's what destiny is all about. Whether you're in your 40s or 30s or 20s or 50s or 60s like me or in your 70s, it really has to do with beginning with the end in mind. When you understand what the end goal is, you'll move towards that. It's almost, I guess, in a reality, it's hypnosis. You're focusing your mind towards moving towards a goal. not just a goal like I want to make $1 million or make 100,000 or get a new job or find a new, whatever. It's more of who you become as the hero of your story. Now, most people, they don't think about these things. Most people, I've said this before, they get focused, but they don't stay focused because there's so many things in the world that can distract them. And in addition to that, you got the programming of the unconscious mind happening. So how do you break the pattern? It's the imagination. Imagine, this is what I'm saying, imagine where you're going to be in 15 weeks, right? Imagine where you're going to be in 2024. Imagine, where are you going to be in 5 years? Imagine where you're going to be in 10 years. So this takes some work, but what's wonderful about it is that in the process of getting really clear about this and writing it down, it impacts your unconscious mind. And in the process of impacting your unconscious mind, you tend to gravitate towards this destiny or this future that you want to create, and you become the cause of your life, not necessarily living at the effect of your life. Now, obviously, if there's a storm and a tree falls on your house or on your car or on you, there's certain things that you can't control. I'm not saying, you have godlike powers. But what I am saying is, instead of being a victim of circumstances, or rather than just waiting and seeing what's going to happen, you are intentional about your life. Well, let's face it, you only have one, right? I always go back to the concept or the metaphor of travel. If you know you're going to go to Ireland, these cards have Ireland on them. If you know you're going to go to Ireland and you're only going to be there for 10 days, you're very intentional. This is what I want to see. I want to kiss the Blarney Stone. I want to buy a wool sweater. I want to eat some fish and chips. I want to go to the Guinness Museum. There's certain things you want to do because you only have a small section of time to do it in, right? And each day gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It's the same thing with life, In the process of thinking about this, you're moving towards your destiny. So I have to give credit to Donald Miller. I absolutely love his work. He talks about doing two things that have changed my life. Last time I talked about it, but I didn't share everything with you. I kind of held back, but I feel that I want to share this with you. Two things he talks about. The first thing he talks about is having a log line. A log line. So write that down. If you look at a movie like Star Wars, there's going to be a paragraph, maybe like 4 or 5 sentences, that is going to explain the movie, right? Or Gone with the Wind, or The Wizard of Oz, right? Whatever the movie is, or whatever the book is, or I'm looking to see if I have a DVD here, I don't. But on the back of a DVD of a movie, it would have a little paragraph so that you look at it and it tells you exactly what the movie's about. Or a book, right? It's gonna tell you in a paragraph form what the book is about. So you pick it up and you go, I don't want to watch this movie. I don't want to spend 3 hours listening and watching. It's not important to me, not watching it. Or a book, right? You see a book and you're like, this really appeals to me. Look what's happening here. So what Donald Miller encourages his clients to do, and I've done it, is to create a log line. So let me share with you my log line. I've never done this before. It's very personal, it's very private, but I just want to do this. I'm going to put this out here. So I wrote this a couple years ago. I've tweaked it just a little bit over the years, but for the most part, this hasn't really changed probably in about, I want to say 3 years. So this is a log line. It's not something you would copy for yourself because your story's different, but here it goes. And I have this, by the way, in a journal. A small town magician goes on a long journey to find the real magic in life. It's only after many obstacles and emotional setbacks that he finds it. Fears are faced and dragons are slain in the making of the wizard who ultimately finds meaning in sharing his insights with others. Now, don't ask me how I figured that out. I don't even remember. And it's not like I Googled it. I didn't do, artificial intelligence. It came from my soul. It came from my inner self. It came from me. I didn't ask anybody. maybe I was inspired, but all I can tell you is this is very meaningful. For me, it's my log line. So I made it up. It's not necessarily true. I made it up as my destiny. Okay? So this is powerful because it impacts the unconscious. And when you impact the unconscious, you tend to move towards it. Rather than saying, well, I guess it depends on who gets elected next year. I think that's a terrible place to be. I guess it depends on the economy. Again, I think that's a terrible place to be. Now, you can choose that if you want. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about this is who I am, this is my destiny, this is my story. Not that it's going to happen 100% of the time, but this is the story that I'm living into. Okay, so here's another one. This is an obituary. Now, I know I talked about this last time. It's very, very morbid. I don't even know if anybody's going to read this when I'm dead, but I wrote an obituary for Gregory Dwyer. I put first of all my date here, and this is a little longer. This is like 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. So bear with me. I'm looking at the time. I have about 3 minutes. So what's the purpose of this? Well, the purpose of an obituary is to get clear on who you are, your identity, your mission, your purpose. You want the world to know what was important to you, but you're also conditioning your unconscious so that you're going to gravitate towards these things versus being distracted in 100 million different directions. So here's my obituary. My obituary, not yours. All right, so I got my name at the top. My full name is Gregory Dwyer. It says Gregory Dwyer was told at an early age that he had the gift of being a showman and a speaker. He fell in love with magic and the performing arts in school. That focus was interrupted when his mother died when he was 15 years old. What followed was a spiritual awakening and many years of education to become a minister. He was ordained on August 9, 1992, and served a few parishes only to discover that he wanted more out of life. Having the heart of a seeker, he soon found himself involved with free enterprise and personal growth. It was the speaking and retreat business that would take Gregory around the world. These business ventures gave Gregory the opportunity to share his insights with others. Gregory is the author of 2 books, and in his senior years, he served as a business and church consultant. All right, and at that point, I'm going to ask them to take the bouquet or flowers that are on the coffin and throw it over their head and see who catches it to see who's next. All right, so I know this is morbid. I know we're going in October into Halloween, but the idea is your destiny can be in your hands. I'm not saying everything, right? There are certain things that come into your life that interrupt you, that you don't expect, right? Like sickness or loss of job or different things. We know that. But what I'm talking about here is, number one, not getting distracted because you know the outcome. You are beginning with the end in mind. I mean, what's a better thing to do than having an obituary? I guess the next thing would be, carving out your gravestone, right? I told you I was sick. But what I'm talking about here is becoming very clear on what's important. Now, when you do this, it takes time, right? And when you reflect upon it, every single day or every week or month or whatever you do, hey, this isn't in the plan. This isn't in the story. In the story, the hero doesn't, go on, a side trip to do something else because he knows he has to, stay focused on the mission. So today we are concluding Diamond Mind. Next week, it's a bonus. Next week, we're talking about the 2 things that you must do to put this all together. And just remember this, most people get focused, very few people stay focused, but you can do it. Talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.